everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm really excited to be here today with everybody, and really grateful for SciArt for building this program for everyone as we all spend a bit more time inside with ourselves and our loved ones. It's really wonderful to have a program of activity that both helps us learn, stimulates our senses, and allows us to step into a bit of creative space that I know we all enjoy. So my name is Robyn Landau. I'm a wellbeing scientist and artist, and I use science to help us better understand and direct what well-being means from a neurological perspective and a physiological perspective, understanding what internal and external touch points and triggers stimulate us and how that affects our overall experience. So the focus of my work sits in a field called Neuroaesthetics, which is the intersection of art and science. And it helps us understand from a scientific standpoint, how do we experience art? What is happening inside our brains as we walk into a room and we're filled with loads of different stimuli and sensations that flood our brain? How about when we're actually in the act of making ourselves? What's happening there? And it's really about our understanding of how we perceive pleasure and really exploring how our experience of the world around us impacts our state of being, and really translating these scientific research into applicable ways that we can tangibly experience in our everyday lives. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing here today. So I believe creativity is fundamental to every human being and really impacts our overall levels of joy and contentment throughout the day in our lives. In addition to studying science, I am a dancer and a ceramicist, as well as a yoga practitioner. I also enjoy collage, which we'll be doing today. So I fuse these organic and energetic schools of thought into the work that I do, into a real cross-modal approach so we can see everything from a holistic view. So I think art is one of the most incredible things about it is the ability for it to transform us and transport us somewhere new. And that's really what we're talking about today, is transforming and transporting us to new experiences of the world. And so what's most interesting is we can go into an individual place that's really unique to ourselves, and the way we interpret or relate to a situation is based on a variety of factors, including our personality, how connected we are to emotions or how we feel them in our body, our experience and level of training in something, or our predisposition towards it, or our predisposition to certain genetic traits and makeup. So whether you engage in fine art or dance or computer-generated outputs, music, architecture, interior design, or other kind of tactical elements, art really has a way of transporting us to new dimensions without ever having to leave the room. So this is done a lot of the time through our emotional processing. And when we are experiencing our emotions through art, it's actually quite different than the real emotions that we'd experience in our everyday lives within ourselves. And in neuroaesthetics, we call this aesthetic emotions, and they allow us to transform, for example, something quite sad into something quite moving and positive for us. So there's a sense of distance that you have from a piece of art when you're experiencing it, or even when you're creating it, that allows almost like a safe space for you to process something and have a positive feeling from it. So the best example that we have of this that can relate to everybody is if you've ever listened to a sad piece of music and actually felt quite positively moved from it. This is something we call the mediation of being moved by a sad work and transforming it into something enjoyable. Sometimes we put on a sad piece of music and it has an element of nostalgia that takes us back in time to something quite special, or maybe it transports us into a future time when we can imagine something or a role playing out that actually brings us a lot of joy or makes us feel a bit more calm inside. So the experience of art as a perceiver is actually just one way and one of the many benefits to one of the many ways to reap the benefits of art. The other, of course, is to be engaged in the art of making itself, which obviously has a lot more stimulation and uses a lot more of our physiological and neurological processing as we're actually engaged in the experience ourselves. So we know that this is shown through multiple studies that it has a really significant impact on our mental health and overall satisfaction. So numerous studies all tell the story of engaging in art enhances our self-identity, our self-esteem, it reduces stress, it stimulates our cognition, develops cognitive flexibility and openness. And the more that we do something, the more plasticity in our brain will react. And so if we think about the neurons in our brain and the brain waves, just like the muscles in our body, they work in the exact same way. So the more we have access to them, the more we use them, the more they can be used across our everyday lives. And so the more that we engage in art, whether through experiencing it or whether through making it ourselves, the more we're going to have access to those neurons that are being used and fired and growing as a result of our continued use. So what I find most incredible about the experience of making art is how easily and quickly we can be transported into a brand new place and time, and really into a place of calm, which I know is something that a lot of us are looking for right now. It gives us a lot of inspiration to be able to visualize something new and actually see ourselves in a different place. And this can mean actually tangibly thinking physically, or maybe we just feel something new in our body and we're actually opening up space within ourselves to feel anew and almost feel like we're a new person or in a new place. So today we're going to be working with the medium of collage. I'll introduce you to all the pieces in just a second, but this is really incredible practice because it's really easy to do at home. All you need is some old magazines. If you are apt in the computer, you could use it through computer-generated systems. I really like using the tactility of the paper itself because it has this really organic quality. It connects you with your hands, and using your hands, it brings your attention into focus. And we know that does a lot for our brain in terms of our attentional resources, our executive functioning. It reduces mind wandering, and it allows us to be really present in the moment. So what I love about collage is that you don't necessarily need to know a starting point for your place. You can really just open up a magazine and draw inspiration from anything that you see. And one new image you find can actually take your piece into an entirely different direction that you never really thought it would go in. And all of a sudden, that was the finishing piece. So I think you'll need just a few tools. So you need some scissors. I have a large one and a small set of scissors. I have a little bit of PVA glue, which you can get on Amazon or your local shop. You can use a card. I have like a ruler as well as a ceramic tool that I like to use. Anything that has a flat surface for when you want to kind of put your piece together on the paper in the end. So I've cut out a few pieces just to prepare us for, and I really had a lot of visions of kind of wearing something new, going to a new place, being outside. So I'm going to work with actually maybe building an idea of somebody who's like lifting off into space somewhere. And this is a piece that I found in a magazine. I think it's a U. It's going to exist for us today as a pair of legs. So I'm going to put these here, and I'm just going to start cutting a few pieces that I found. I think the act of cutting itself is actually one of my favorite parts of collage. And, it's really meditative. And I think if you just focus as you're doing the piece on the different sensations that you feel in your body, or paying attention to maybe the colors that you've been drawn to. You'll see here that I have been drawn today to lots of vibrant colors. Maybe it's matching the sunshine that we've been experiencing here in the UK for the past number of days, or maybe it's just the energy burst I need after being inside for so long. Maybe I'm just visualizing the summer and hopefully being outside soon again. So I like to just use my large scissors to maybe be a little less precise when I have a large piece of paper and I'm cutting something small. So I'll be a bit precise cutting it out, and then I will go in and refine some of those trimmings. So and this is something you can do on your own. You can put on some music to really take you to another journey. You could do it with your family if you have any siblings or your parents or your friends that you might be living with. You probably want to have a little something to catch your cuttings, but I'm letting them run rampant on my floor. And you can just hoover that stuff up afterwards. So I'm cutting out a little hat you see here. And I'm just going to go ahead and refine some of that work. Something also quite beautiful about collage is that it can be quite organic. If you don't have so much experience with making art yourself, this is a really wonderful practice that's not very intimidating to get started on. And you don't really need to be very precise with your cuts. I will cut mine all with scissors today, but something that's really incredible is actually just ripping the pages themselves and actually seeing like that organic quality of it being torn adds a lot of layer and depth to it. So as you're doing this, as I'm sitting here cutting these really small bits, I'm trying to do them in a fashion that's timely for the video. Think about things that come up for you. Just notice sensations. Are you getting frustrated at all? Do you feel actually stressed about anything that's happening? I'm about to probably make a mistake. Like, how is that making me feel? As I cut this tiny little section, and just notice some of those things, because those feelings that you have are all part of the experience and can all actually help you transport you to somewhere new. I have one more piece somewhere. Let's see where these boots are. So I'm really interested to hear from all of you. So I look forward to fielding any comments or questions you have. I love if you could share your work when it's done, and see all the differences and similarities and uniqueness that you all experience from your own works. And I think it's really interesting to see what colors you'll be drawn to, because we know that the colors all have a different impact on our state of mind and our state of being. And it'll be interesting to see what people are drawn to today. So through this experience, we have not only the part of our brain that's responsible for the executive functioning of our brain, but also our emotions, which is our limbic system. So our limbic system and our thalamus, which is responsible for all the sensory inputs that are coming in, sending them to the cortex and a different part of the brain for processing. So that limbic system has incredible power in our brain, especially at a time right now It's responsible for areas like happiness as well as fear, and it really is responsible for the way in which we experience the world. And right now, those things can feel maybe a bit heightened. That working with art actually is a way for you to calm those feelings down, bring in processing through the senses in order to get out of the mind. And by doing all this, we're getting more into our bodies. And the more we get into our bodies and feel the senses, my room is a bit cold right now. I'm a bit chilly. I wish I wore a sweatshirt. Those things all kind of help me get out of my mind of, being on video and showing everybody in the world. So I have a few pieces now. I'll show them up to you. I still haven't quite decided what I'm going to do yet. So I have my giant legs, my giant woman. I'm quite small, so maybe I'm envisioning myself being someone quite bigger. Maybe she's on stilettos, or she's got, what are they called? Stilts. And then there's a pair of shoes that I found. So I'm going to attach the shoes. I have a couple of bodies. So we see I have this woman, and I'm going to be putting a hat on her. It will be covering her face. So you can see she's obviously somewhere very bright. I have another option though. I have found this woman in this dress, which is quite calling to me, but I'm not sure how it's going to look with the hat. Perhaps that's something quite inviting. I'm not sure which one I like yet, but you can see between the difference of these two things, they're incredibly different from each other. And so that's what I was talking about in regards to your piece can take so many forms. And these just become completely different works of art. I think I might go with the red one. I don't know where I put it. Here it is. She feels a bit more alien in her big dress. And I think for today's theme, transporting us to space into a new planetary realm, I think that one might be inviting. So it's always nice if you want to just pull out a book and see if there's anything else that calls to you. This is a great magazine I found. And there is something I saw in here the other day that was just so beautiful and bright. And while I'm building this woman, I wonder if there's anything on the periphery of her that might add to the piece a little bit. So let's just see if I can find it here. One of my favorite parts of collage is actually ripping the pages from the magazines. I love the sound it makes. And I just love like the texture of it. So I'm just going to cut this one last piece, and then we're probably ready to glue. The beautiful thing about collage as well is that it's something that you can continue to come back to with time. I have a piece over there that has been sitting for a while, and I mean, when you come back to it, you can see something new again for the first time. You can find a new piece, as I said, that will completely transform it. But we're doing it quite fast today, but feel free to work with me on the video, leave it for a few days, come back to it, make a new one, move things around, really have some fun. It doesn't need to be serious at all. As you see, I'm using really bright colors. It's lifting my mood. I'm just going to snip this big bit away. So it's up to you whether you want to use the bigger or smaller scissors. I tend to like the bigger ones because I find the lines I can cut a little bit more evenly. So I'm not sure if you can see it so well here, but I think I might add like this blob that really could just be anything from a whole different world. That's not working. Over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay the pieces out in front of me. I have this board that I'm working on. As I have a carpet in front of me, the board is really helpful as a flat surface. So I'm just going to lay the pieces on, understand exactly how I want them to go. I have my hat, her space hat potentially. I have this little bit that I found the other day, and I'm just going to actually stick it on the top of her hat because I really like it because it's kind of radiating some sort of energy outside her hat. So it's really small things, you know, like I cut the top of the hat, it's flat, and then I found this in a little box of cuttings I have from previous works. And it's fun to kind of just see what adding things together will do and how much it completely changes the quality of the piece. I also have a few stickers, actually, of some planets. And so for the sake of this, I think I'll choose one of them and we'll stick it in the background of the photo, of the piece of work. And I think I'll put this kind of blobby thing in somewhere. And you know what? I've cut these shoes, but you know what? Now that they're cut, they don't actually look like shoes anymore. I don't think she needs them. So this is what I mean by you think you might have an idea about something and then it will change. So I'm just going to cut the planet. I think for the sake of today, we'll go with Earth. You know, the planet on which we live and that we're all thinking about so much now today. So while she's lifting off into a new planet, into a new time zone, into a new dimension, she's maybe returning back to Earth. And returning back to Earth in a time and place where we're all a bit healthier and maybe some things have changed for the better and we're learning from our experiences, and she's coming back to teach us some new lessons. So I have my Earth cut out, very exciting. I think it will go right up here. All right, well, we'll see where these things want to go after. So one of the most important things to remember is just to know with the order in which you want to place things. So first my legs will go on. This piece is relatively simple and easy to administer, won't require so much glue. I just use a piece of plastic. I think it's the top of a Tupperware, and I'm going to just put some glue into the center. It's a bit thick for the work, so I have a little bit of water, and I'm just going to take this foam brush that I have. I quite like to use these, and I'm just going to thin out the glue a little bit so it's not quite as thick. You want to make sure that you aren't using too much glue at once, especially if your piece of paper is more thin. I have a quite thick piece of cardboard that I'm working with, so it shouldn't be so bad. So just make sure that you have a different surface to do your gluing on. You don't want to glue onto your final piece of work. So I'm just going to brush the glue on to my piece. And I'm just going to stick it down. One of the things you want to make sure of is just not to get any wrinkles. So I'm using my finger just now, but I can also use one of my tools to really smooth it down. Your paper is going to have a tendency to curl up, and it's a little bit of a science to understand how much glue you need. So it looks like I actually haven't used enough glue here. Let's see. So it really helps if you have kind of this flat tool to get these wrinkles out. And it also will spread the glue underneath. So you just want to make sure you're not using too much glue, because that will, what's the word I'm looking for? Bleed onto your piece of paper. So first piece done. And I'm just going to move on to my second piece here. Stick her on like this. And my beautiful hat for all those rays being so close to the sun. Whoops. There we go. And you know what, I've actually made a bit of a mistake. It's okay, just peel it up. I forgot to put in my little radiant beam. And what have I done with Planet Earth? Let's see if I can unstick it in time. And last but not least, there we have it. My space lady lifting off into Earth. Thank you so much for joining me. It was a pleasure to work with you. I look forward to chatting with you all in the comments.